Hey everybody, I'm Jason Mefford and I'm back with Brad Miller and we're walking a spiritual path today. We want to talk a little bit about luck, which may not seem like too much of a spiritual topic, but as we get into this, you're going to understand why we want to talk about this because we're going to take a little spin on it and actually show you how it does, in fact, tie back to your spiritual life. So, so Brad, if you want to, because I know you kind of had a story to start with to kind of explain this in general, and then we'll get into it in a little bit deeper.
Yeah. Um, this kind of came about as an episode from last week. So it was my wife, my daughter, and myself. We ran some errands and we're, stopping at different places, grabbed some lunch while we were out. And while we were out, we decided, hey, it was a nice day. Let's go stopping to visit some kind of spiritual stores. Not that that makes any difference, but that's kind of the places that we were at. So we go to a couple. The last different things we had to do, stop and do some errands. So the last thing we did was we stopped at this particular store. And it's a very small little store. And so we go in, and it's just the three of us and then the owner. And it was less than probably 15 seconds from getting inside the door. Like I feel like I was barely inside the store. And the owner kind of looks at my daughter and is like, "Do you like unicorns?" And my daughter, being a 9-year old, was, like, well, yeah, of course I like unicorns. And so the one was like, "See that down there on that bottom shelf? See there's a unicorn down there? Go grab that. You can have that." And the way this kind of the kind of way this ties in is that this is not the first time that daughter has that someone has given my daughter something, particularly at stores or from someone who's selling something. It is a very common occurrence, in fact, that people give my daughter things just randomly. Um, she got the thing there, that little unicorn. At the end, when we were leaving, the owner said, "Hey, here's some little uh, mint leaves or mint seeds, and if you take this thing, you put in water and you plant it, whatever, it'll grow into mint plants." And she gave my daughter some mint plants to grow, some mint seeds. Um, we went on vacation, and we were, there was like a little outdoor markety sort of stuff, and my daughter was looking at, I don't know, a piece of jewelry or something, and the vendor was like, "Hey, would you like to have that? Here, you can have it." And just randomly let her have the piece of jewelry that we was looking at, a neck or bracelet or something she was looking at. And this happens to my daughter all the time, where she'll go into some place, she'll be not even looking at something, didn't even show any signs of interest, and somebody will just say, "Hey, here you go. How about you have this?" You know, um, right before Christmas, we went to a restaurant, and as we were kind of wrapping up dinner, one of the staff came out with a little box that had a couple cookies in it, and a little kind of a little sugar cookie, Christmas cookies, and she's like, here's some sugar cookies for you, you know." And she just handed her a little thing of cookies, and like no one else in the restaurant got cookies. There's other kids in there, so it wasn't like she was giving to all the kids, specifically to my daughter. And so I was kind of thinking about this earlier this week, and the question I was like, why is my daughter get these things? Like, why do people just randomly give her stuff out of the blue? Like, what is it that's causing this? My wife says, "Oh, that she's, how my daughter's just so lucky." But I'm like, there's no such thing as luck. This is not luck. There's something else here. What is it? And so I've been kind of sitting with this this week. Like, what is it that's behind all this?
Well, what's interesting, because like you said, I think, part of the tie-in to spirituality on this is, we get taught to believe certain things or to discount things as being luck,
Mm,
right?
mm-hmm,
And so just like you said, right? Well, sometimes we sit here and say, "Oh, well, we were just lucky."
mm-hmm,
Well, were you really lucky or was the universe watching out for you, right? Because if we think we're lucky, then often we're not actually grateful or giving thanks and praise and gratitude to beings or God or the universe or whatever you want to, however you describe it, that we're not actually kind of recognizing or appreciating where things come from. And, we can get more into kind of manifestation that's all tied into this as well. But I think, one trap of thinking, oh, well, that was just luck, is that we're not giving credit to the universe, what's actually happening, right?
Mhm.
Or to always think that, oh, they're lucky, I'm not. I'm just not a lucky person.
Mhm.
That usually ties oneself into um, kind of some negative emotions, but even false beliefs. And part of our spiritual journey is getting rid of those false beliefs, right? Getting rid of and
Mhm.
changing the programming and the indoctrination and the beliefs that we've been given over our lives, right? And so I think it's interesting. Like you said, there is no such thing as luck. And I'll tell you, it may seem a little off base, but it's not. And it's a good story. Okay. Is Last night, one of my friends sent me a link to a YouTube video that was a skit from Saturday Night Live. And when I was a teenager, I used to stay up every Friday night, you know, uh, live from New York. It's Saturday night, and so I would stay up every Saturday night and watch Saturday Night Live. And so when I saw the clip, it's like, oh, I haven't seen a Saturday Night Live clip for a while because I don't really watch it anymore. But my friend sent it to me, and it was a skit that they did about abductions. And so, just to explain a little bit about what this is, so there's people who have been abducted or had encounters with UFOs, alien beings, right? And there's a lot of documented experiences, and some experiences are good, some experiences are bad, but you can kind of see that there's some consistency in a lot of the things that people describe if they've had this experience. And so a lot of times people are either called abductees or experiencers who have had this, what the world calls a phenomenon, happen to them. And obviously, the people that use the word abduction, that sounds more like being kidnapped. And some of these experiences are like that. It's like people are being kidnapped. There's other experiencers, right, which have a completely different experience. And so typically people who kind of, refer to them as experiencers or I'm an experiencer are people who have had good,
Mhm.
or at least in their mind, good experiences here. And so, it was interesting because the way the skit was set up, there were these two people who were the government officials in the Pentagon that were interviewing these three people who had been taken by aliens, and the government really wanted to know what's going on. It's kind of this whole formal thing, right, from their side. And so, they're like, when you saw the blue light, and you were taken up into the craft, what happened, right? And so two of the three people were like, oh, I was just enveloped in this love, and I felt this lightness in my body and the love of everyone around me. Like two of the people were doing that, right? And
Mhm.
the third person was like, slouched back in their chair, smoking a cigarette, crusty kind of person. And they would say something, the person's like, well, that wasn't my experience, right? And would instead talk about, jokingly kind of the abduction side of it, where it's like I was taken, I'm naked, people are, aliens are poking, prodding me, doing procedures on me, all this kind of stuff, right? So there was this huge dichotomy between, the two people's experience versus her experience. And so I watched it and I texted my friend back, heart, ha ha ha, and said, yeah, there's in a joking way, they really kind of explained kind of the two basic experiences that people tend to have when those things happen, right? But obviously, it was funny. I was almost crying as I was watching this video, right?
Mhm.
And so, I texted that back to my friend, and she responded back and said, "Yeah, isn't it interesting how the experiencer influences the experience?" I was like, "Huh." Interesting too, right? The two individuals were kind of light and love and happy and peace, and the other one was this, crusty, angry kind of person, right? And so, again, it was Saturday Night Live skit. I'm not saying anything about if somebody's been, abducted or had things happen to them, that there was something wrong with them and that's what they deserved, sort of thing.
Mhm.
But I think it kind of goes along with what we're talking about here, right? Is it's amazing how people who feel like they're lucky tend to be luckier. People who don't feel like they're lucky can never seem to catch a break, right? And so there is a tie in, to this. And, Brad, as you've thought about this with your daughter, I don't know if you've kind of come to some conclusions about it or what things you've learned.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the questions or one of the things that I think people will say is like, well, is it that their belief in their luck influenced the experience, or is it the experience influenced their take on it? So the fact that all these things negative happened to them led them to believe, well, I'm just unlucky because all these things are happening, versus I am an unlucky person, and because of that, all the negative things are happening. And so that's one of those questions of which comes, almost like a chicken egg situation of which is first, the experience contributing to the feeling, or the belief, the feeling contributing to the experience. Um, I mean, I think there's probably interplay into both. I think that probably an experience happened first that led to the belief, and then that belief is kind of perpetuated essentially. Those experiences, you get more of what you're thinking of, whatever your thoughts are, your feelings, your vibrations are, that's what you get more of. And so when you start saying, oh, I'm this unlucky, the aliens are poking and prodding me, and then yes, those are the experiences that you're going to get drawn to you. um, versus my daughter who, you know, she is she is one of the kindest people that I know. She's very much all about helping others. Like anytime that there's like some sort of a school thing, like, oh, they're donating for wounded veterans or something, like she wants to raid her piggy bank to be able to get money to donate to these people, like to be able to bring it in. It's not because she wants to win prizes or anything. It's because she wants to help and give.
Mhm.
She loves animals, all this other stuff. So she's just has a huge heart. And so to me, that is part of her energy. That's part of what she sends out. That's who she is. And so these things come back to her.
Mhm.
That kind of thing experiences are attracted to that. The people who want to give her things, they don't realize it, I don't think, but they are experiencing coming into that feeling of that she puts out.
Yeah, because the energy that we put out comes back,
Right.
right? And so, if you want to change the world around you, you have to change you, and then the world
Yep.
around you changes to match your frequency and vibration of what you're giving
Mhm.
off. And, I know a lot of people don't like to admit it, and it was hard for me to admit, a lot of my life too, but it's true. I mean, that's been my experience, and like you said, because your daughter is so kind and giving, she just gives off that energy. And so people that are attracted to her want to give her things, right?
Mhm.
Because she wants to give people things. It's that reciprocity, that I need,
Mm-hmm.
the cause and effect, karma, all those different terms that we may use to try to describe some of this, but that's how the universe works. It works on laws, just like we think of from a scientific perspective. It's the same thing in the spiritual world. We just can't physically see, touch, taste, feel it, but it's true nonetheless, right? And you can tell, when somebody is angry, when they're nasty, when they're yelling, what do they usually get? Other people around them being nasty and
Mm-hmm.
angry and yelling at them too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it from that side, that's what you tend to attract, or that's what people mirror back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, right? Either you're attracting people or people are just mirroring what you're giving. But when we change ourselves and we do things from a different place, right? That's when things around us start to change. If
Mm-hmm.
you're always kind and loving, and that's always your intention, and that's always what you're doing, guess what? You're going to be surrounded by other people who are kind and loving
Mm-hmm.
because they're attracted to it and you're attracted to them, right? And it's no different than if you think about like hobbies, you know. If somebody likes to play golf, well, who are they probably going to be attracted to? Other people who like to play golf, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like to play golf, you're probably not going to be attracted or have many friends who just love golf, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same way with, anything that's out there. And I think it's, we tend to see what we're giving off too, and so I think a lot of times when even on things like social media feeds, I mean, I don't go on social media very much, um, but I don't see a lot of the hate and vindictiveness that a lot of people complain about on social media. I'm not giving that out. I'm not liking anything that has anything to do with that. I'm not even really seeing it much
Mm-hmm.
at all. Again, not that I love social media. I'm not out there. For me, it's not a good use of my time or energy, but the reality around us is shaped based on who we are being, the
Mm-hmm.
choices that we're making, the vibration and frequencies that we're giving off. And I remember a story about Mother Teresa, that I was told, where there were a lot of people wanting her to join their anti-war movement. And she's like, no, if you had a peace movement, I would gladly join, but I can't join an anti-war movement. Right, which to me I think is a great way of kind of explaining this too. She didn't want to be around the frequencies of people who were angry about war and fighting
Mm-hmm.
about not going to war, but she was all about peace, peace and love. Yeah, I would gladly help and support that, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's a different energy feel. Just like even in that Saturday Night Live skit, right? There was a different feel of the two people versus the one person. If you lined your daughter up with two other kids in her class at school, you could probably again see a difference between those three different kids. And each one of those kids is going to attract something different. The rambunctious kid who's always trying to get into everything and super hyper, when they walked into the store, I don't think the owner would have said, honey, there's a unicorn over there. Would you like it? They'd be like, oh shit, there's a little kid in here who's going to be touching everything and trying to break stuff, right? It would have been a different energetic feel
Mm-hmm.
at that point. And again, which caused which? Well, you know, chicken and egg. But
Yeah. So yeah, and so that's again, I think and kind of the reason why this is all kind of came again, just besides that something just happened, is then to kind of help those who are on the other side, because like you said, like you, I don't do a lot on social media, as far as what's going on. There's a lot of things right now in the world. A lot of people there's a lot of fear in the world, and a lot of pain and anger and things like that going on right now. And so I try to just avoid all that and stuff like that. But I know that it's out there because people, even some of the people who normally don't really show some of these things, I can feel it from them and some of the things that they say or whatnot. And so some of it is, how then do we take that, the knowledge, the fact that what we're putting out there, the vibrations, the energies that we're putting out there, that's going to attract to us certain things. How do we use that knowledge to then use it to get the things that we want in our lives, as opposed to the fear and the hate and all the anger? Because there's a lot of people who are feeling that right now and feel like that, the world's going, hell in a handbasket, and that all negative things are happening all the time, and that they're just kind of stuck in it, that they're a victim. There's a lot of victim mentality out there right now that I'm feeling. Um, so how can people then use this, what we're talking about, to change that and no longer feel like, hey, I'm the victim, but take control as much as you can control things, but maybe make choices
Mhm.
that then changes their experiences.
Well, and I think that's where it all comes back to choice
Mhm.
in a lot of ways. Because, like I said, if one is in a victim mentality, they feel like they have no choice,
Mhm.
and that's why they feel like a victim. But again, this is a spiritual tie-in, right? But if you're standing in your personal power and you're making conscious choices, yes, there are effects of choices, but the better choices we make, the more likely the outcome will match what we're choosing, right? And again, it's not, sometimes things still happen, even even when we're trying to set a different example or choosing differently. And so again, we'll go back to the grocery store because here was an example that I had again on Sunday. Okay. So I give people space, right? I mind my own business. I give people space. I expect people to mind their own business and give me space, right? And so, when I go to the grocery store and, oh, I need to get half and half, or I need to get eggs, or whatever it is. So I go to where it is. If somebody is standing in front of what it is that I need to get, I just sit and wait. I am
Mhm.
patient. I wait for them to move, right?
Mhm.
Now, that's what I put out there. That's how I, right, choose to be. That's what I choose to do. And for the most part, I do that, right? I realize and I respect that, I'm not more important than the other person, right? And
Mhm.
I'm not in a hurry per se, so I can wait, allow them to have their time, and then I have my time.
Yep.
And so that's how I choose to live my life. And so, on the one hand, we could say, well, then that means that because that's how I'm doing it, everybody else is going to do the same for me. Well, sometimes, but not all the time, right?
Mhm.
And so, we were standing in front of the produce area looking at some oranges, and two women come racing in the front door, and the produce is right by the front door. And literally, they're like walking fast, they're in a hurry, they're whatever, right?
Mhm.
Stop and peel off just one banana and throw it in the cart, and then come right up to where we are and start to come forward. And it's like, excuse me, I need to get something here. Now, at that point, I have a choice, right?
Mhm.
Because you're invading my personal space, you're freaking my friend out because you're invading her personal space too, right? And it's like, so I have a choice. I could turn around and I could just lay into that person and say, "How dare you?" Blah, 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 right? I could do that.
Mhm.
I could turn around and slap that woman in the face, right? I have a choice. I can choose to do whatever I want. Now there's consequences for whatever I do. If I slap that woman, well, there's going to be some real consequences probably from it, right?
Mhm.
If I choose to get mean and nasty with her, what's going to happen? She's probably going to get mean and nasty with me, right? And if things are going to escalate and we're going to say things. And, sometimes when people just reach in front of me, I just ignore it
Mhm.
because they actually reach in front of me. Now, this person was coming at us, arm outstretched, trying to, get out of the way, you people. And I didn't even turn around. And I said, "We'll be done in just a minute," in kind of a soft and kind voice. "We'll be done in just a minute." We didn't hurry. We finished doing what we needed to and we moved, and they swooped right back in. But I tried to set a boundary of, we're not going to move. You're not more important than we are, right? We're the same. And I'm not going to, if she had come back and said something, or done something else, then maybe I would have had to escalate it or do something different. But I want to respond from a place of love and kindness,
Mhm.
which again, that was the kindest thing I could think of at that time because a part of me would have loved nothing more than to turn around, give that woman a piece of my mind, and slap her in the face and say, "Give her a
How
what's
dare
what?
you?
How dare you?" Right? But in my development and my growth, that's not how I choose. And so I'm learning how to respond in a way that is a choice that I would like to make. Now, again, it doesn't mean that, again, when I'm doing that, that it's always going to go the way I think it's going to go. But she didn't say anything, right? And
Mhm.
and they stayed there. We moved. They got their stuff. Now, she did flash me nasty looks the rest of the time in the store whenever she saw us, and I pretended I didn't see it. But I could see the anger that she was throwing our way from the glances, and that's okay. She can choose to do what she wants to do. I'm not going to let it affect me. But, I think that's part of it too, is, we do the best we can, and things usually work out for us, but it doesn't always, and that's okay. It's just part of the growth and development, right? And as I do that more, my power, my personal power grows, my energy grows, my love for other people grow, and people are just going to start to recognize it without me even having to say anything.
Mhm. Yeah, they'll be able to feel it. They'll be able to
They'll
sense
be
it.
able to feel it right away. They
Mhm.
won't even, try to butt in because they'll
Mhm.
see me for who I am and they'll give me the respect that I would give them.
Mhm.
Unless they're there
Yeah.
to test me, which is sometimes what happens with me.
Well, the first thing I thought when we started this line of conversation, my first thought was it an actual woman? Because not always are the people like that come up to you actual people.
Well, I said woman, but it was anyway. Yeah, those two were put there for a reason, and for me to have the opportunity to respond the way that I did and do some other things I did that I won't share here, right, but it's but yeah, a lot of times when we see something like that, we think it's one thing, but it's really something else.
Mhm.
And anyway, so you're right. Was what were they really two women? No. Women, not women. Who
But
were
we're not
there?
talking about like gender here, so let's
No, no, no.
that's
It has nothing to do with
yeah.
gender. And the interesting thing too is again, these beings were flashing me dirty looks from across the store the whole time we were in there. And we finished our shopping, went up, put all of our stuff. And when we go to the grocery store, we stock up. The whole cart's full because I don't go to the grocery store very often, right? So the whole belt is
Hmm.
full of stuff. And they just have a few things, but guess who shows up huffy puffy right behind us in the line too? Those two women. And I could feel their huffy puffy energy. I mean, those two beings, whatever. I could feel their energy, and I just went about calmly doing, not being rushed at all,
Hmm.
standing in my personal power. And guess what happened almost instantly after they got up behind us, all huffy puffy? Somebody else goes, "Oh, ladies, I can help you on aisle 5." And somebody just opened a new register all of a sudden so they could get out of our space. Right now, interesting, huh? But I think again, that's where am I lucky? Am I unlucky? Am I blessed? Am I cursed? Right? Those are all words that are our own perception based on a lot of times how we're actually acting and the energy that we're giving off.
Hmm. Yeah, it has nothing to do with luck.
No. And there's been a lot of times where people want me to move physically. And it's like, nope. I don't say this out loud, but it's like, nope, fuck you. I ain't moving. I'll be I've had these examples where it's like I'm in a vacant parking lot pretty much by myself, standing there, having a cigarette, little break, and somebody pulls up and wants to park right next to me or pulls up in a way to try to get me to move so they can park where I'm standing. And it's like, nope, I ain't moving, right? And a lot of those are these things that in the 3D we perceive something happening, but something else is really happening. And I know it's hard to explain on here, and I try to give little hints here and there. But when things like this happen, there's something else going on in a completely different energetic and spiritual realm. And the
Hmm.
more that we learn to stand in our own personal power, even in what seems to be 3D normal things, it's like, what's a big deal, Jason? Why don't you just move and get out of the way? Well, if I move and get out of the way now, am I going to move and get out of the way in whatever you tell me I should do? Or am I going to stand in my power and choose to be where I want to be and choose to do what I want to be and do,
Hmm.
as a sovereign being, right? Because a lot of those things end up playing into this because how we act in the 3D affects our spiritual growth.
Hmm. Yeah, which makes me then think of again going back to my daughter. What is Obviously, we see the transaction happening in the 3D. The store owner says, "Hey, would you like that unicorn?" and has her pick it up. But what's going on behind that?
Well, again, I don't know for sure, but I'm just going to throw out some examples of what might be happening. When you and your family walk into a store, you're giving off a certain vibration, frequency, and energy.
Hmm.
When that store owner saw your daughter, if she was open at all, energetically or spiritually, which again, it was a spiritual store, so you would think the person would be a little bit more astute,
Hmm.
she felt something. She may not consciously have realized it, but she felt something,
Right. Yep.
right? And so she's responding energetically to what she's feeling energetically,
Hmm.
right? And I know, one of my friends who's very, uh, very far on the path spiritually, let's say. And he was telling me a story one time where, he was out having coffee with another friend of ours. They were sitting out on the sidewalk area, right? Having coffee or something. And this homeless person that lived in the area here for a while walked up to him. And usually when homeless people walk up, right, they're usually like, hey, can I have some money? Things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this person walked up to my friend and all of a sudden stopped and kind of did this, was kind of looking like this. And it's like, oh, homeless person again, right? I mean, they're carrying stuff in a shopping cart or whatever. And he
Mm-hmm.
goes through all this stuff and he pulls out this little piece of jewelry that he's made. And he's like, oh, I want you to have this. And my friend's like, what? He's like, I want you to have this. And he's like, oh, well, I need to pay you something for it. I need to give you INI. I need to,
Mm-hmm.
right? I want to do something, for you if you're going to give me this gift. And it's like, no, 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 no. I can't take anything from you. Please just take this from me. Right. And again, this is a homeless person that looks crazy to
Mm-hmm.
everybody else who's out there. Right. And, when my friend was telling me this story, as we're talking about it, he just looks at me and he says, I guess he could see who I really am. And I'm like, yeah, he did. He saw your light being, he knew who you were. And so he wanted to give you something because energetically he knew who he was. Now, my friend couldn't give him money because he wouldn't take it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know my friend did something
Mm-hmm.
energetically and spiritually for that man. He healed him in some way. He did something to help him, even though the man would not accept help in the 3D. He did things to help him. That gift does not go without a
Mm-hmm.
consequence, a good consequence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, that happens so much at the time. And as soon as we can really kind of start changing thinking of things as luck and instead, think of things as blessings. As soon as we can, really live more authentic and be the kind, loving people and stand in our power and do the things that we need to do, things will happen to us, right? I mean, again, it's like the reason your daughter gets these gifts all the time is consciously or unconsciously, people can see who she is energetically and they want to serve her. They want to help her. They want to give her something. They feel this obligation to do that. And it's because your daughter's putting that out in the world already, too.
Mm-hmm. Which then makes me wonder, what is she doing behind the scenes as well, besides just putting
Well,
opening.
yeah, because I'll tell you that she's young, right? So she
Mm-hmm.
probably consciously is not doing this. But
Mm-hmm.
when that woman gave her the unicorn, knowing you and, a little bit about your daughter, I'm sure that when your daughter received that in her heart, and I'm sure she's a polite child with adults and probably said, oh, thank you,
Mm-hmm.
probably said something like that out loud. But in her heart, she was probably also feeling gratitude and love in a way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, thank you. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you for doing that for me. Consciously, she probably didn't know what she's doing. But
Right.
when she's doing that, she's radiating energy out. And whether we realize it or not, when we radiate that energy out and other people become exposed to it, it heals them, it lifts them. right? They don't consciously realize it. They don't see it, but those things are happening. And I think that's why those things continue to happen to your daughter. As long as she stays kind and loving and giving, as long as she stays that way, those things are going to continue to happen to her. Doesn't mean nothing bad, quote unquote, is ever going to happen, but the
Sure.
more she is that way, the more she's going to be giving that out, and people are going to be attracted back to her.
Yeah.
And I think that's the lesson too of we're all doing it. It's just us old farts, right? We
Speak
get
for
trapped.
yourself. Oh.
Oh yeah, yeah, okay. This old fart,
Yes.
right? We get trapped in our mind
Mm,
and we don't realize or we're not aware of what's actually going on, what we are actually doing. And that's
mhm,
part of our spiritual path too, is, where's your awareness? And the
mhm,
more we become aware of it, the more these things happen, the more we're practicing it and other things, right? And it's like, most of us think that we're pretty self-aware, but my benefactor, one of the things that he said, he's like, how aware are you really? Do you know how many times your heart beat today? How many times you blinked your eyes? And it's like, oh shit. Uh, no. How aware are we really of what actually is going on all around us?
mhm.
Um, which is kind of another side tangent, but we don't have time to get into on today's episode. But I think, yeah, I think it's a beautiful story of what your daughter is doing and what she's experiencing, and it's something that anyone can experience. So,
Well, and then again, I, I know there are lessons in here for those. Again, it was, and I don't. On the one hand, I was a little hesitant to put this out as a topic for today because I don't want to come across as some sort of with ego of like, oh, my daughter's just the greatest and look how great she is, and obviously that reflects on me as the father and all this other stuff, right? I mean, I definitely don't want that. My purpose is merely I want to be able to use her as an example because it's something that's tangible that we can see to be able to use to help those who maybe are feeling the other side of the coin, who are feeling like they don't get these things, that all these bad things, these bad negative things are always happening to them, that they are don't have the luck. Like I want them to be able to see that if it's something that a 9-year-old can do, then clearly it's something that a 49-year-old or a 59, whatever year old can do as well, that you can change your life.
yeah. Well, because I think it's don't wait for luck to happen. Make choices so you will be lucky, right? And I think that's an
Mhm,
empowering place to come from, which again, it's part of our spiritual path. Empowering, getting back your personal power, stepping into it. That's all part of the process, folks,
mhm,
right? And the more that, make your own luck, right? I think the only place where luck and practice comes in where luck comes before practice is in the dictionary. I think
dictionary.
John Woodard said something like that, Coach. Um, and the whole idea that, preparation, helps make you more lucky. And so I think it's the same way with our choices, right?
Mhm,
The wiser that we choose, the luckier
mhm,
we may find ourselves or other people may perceive us being. But why? It's cause and effect. It's karma. You make good choices, you get better results. It's just that way, right? And so, like you said, Brad, I mean, we can all choose to change. We don't have to be victims, but we have to choose. We have to choose. We have to take action. And when we do, it's amazing how lucky we all can be. So, yeah.
So, so there's a little bit about my daughter.
Yeah, which I think is a good learning again for all of us. Because, like I said, I think it's we can learn a lot from children. And as we get older, sometimes I think we think that we know everything, and it's like, no, watch the kids, see what they're doing, because we can learn a lot from them. So,
Yeah.
so everybody have a great week. We're grateful that you listened, and hope that again you just choose, choose to be lucky, choose to attract what you need to in your life, choose to be kinder, more loving, more peaceful, and send that out in the world, because that will come back to you, and your world around you really will change. So, so with that, we'll see everybody on the next episode.
See you.